have a vendor. Let's say our company is in the US, so our company code currency is USD. If we are posting any transaction other than the local currency, it means USD, there the exchange rate will come into picture. So we have discussed about the exchange rate, on what basis does the system consider. All those things we have seen in the previous session. Now, if this transaction posted, let's say I've posted a vendor, let's say debit expenses and credit, let's say vendor. Now, in this case, our company code currency is USD. Okay, but I'm not posting that in the USD. So my document currency, nothing but transaction currency, is other than this. Let's say Singaporean dollar. Singaporean dollar. Okay, my foreign currency is Singaporean dollar. Okay, so the moment I consider Singaporean dollar and whatever the exchange rate we maintain between SGB, SGD, and the USD, the system will calculate the currency. I mean the conversion accordingly. So the system converts the data accordingly based on the exchange rate what we maintain over here. Right. Now the point is, I'm posting this transaction on, let's say, 10th of January. Now the exchange rate on 10th January 2019 between SGD versus USD, 1 SGD is nothing but 0.8, 0.8 USD. Let us assume. So what system does is, let's say I'm posting SGD 1000. So one Singaporean dollar equals zero point 0.8. One Singaporean dollar equals to zero point 0.8. So for 1000 Singaporean dollar, how much it is? So what I will do, cross multiplication, 1000 into zero point 0.8 divided by 1. So 1000 into 0.8, nothing but 800 USD, whereas 1000 is my Singaporean dollar. So what system does is, system will consider 1000 as a document currency, and whereas company code currency as 800, and will post the transaction. We have seen that part. Now this vendor, so now to this vendor we have to pay 800 USD or 1000 Singaporean dollar. We have to pay 1000 Singaporean dollar to this vendor. Now, as on 31st January 2019, the vendor amount is pending still. It means 800 is showing as USD, 1000 showing as SGD. Still it is open. We have not paid the amount. We have not paid the amount to this vendor at all. So still it is open as on 31st January. It means on the closing day of the month. Now, at the time of posting a vendor invoice, the exchange rate was this thing, 1 SGD versus zero point 0.8 USD. Now, we cannot say that the same exchange rate is there. If the same exchange rate, there is no problem. We can show our financial statements considering 800 in USD and 1000 in SGD. There is no problem in that. But if the exchange rate is differ, okay, if we have a different exchange rate as on 31st, we have not paid, but still the exchange rate is different. So 1 SGD equals to 0.75 USD. There is a change. I mean, whether it is reduced or increased is immaterial, but there is a change. Now we will have to consider this only while we are preparing financial statements as on 31st January. So it means I want to see my true balance sheet. I want to see my true profit and loss account, because there is a change. With this change, we may have some profit or we may have some loss, but whatever it is, we need to show on this profit or loss, whatever we get here, that is called notional. Similar, simply we call it as unrealized gain or loss. If it is a loss, unrealized loss. If it is a gain, we call it as unrealized gain. This is not the true profit or true loss, because we are not going to pay this amount to this vendor at this exchange rate, because so probably we are paying it on for I mean 10th February 2019. So maybe you will have a different exchange rate. So when you are paying the amount to the vendor, whatever the gain or loss that you are getting out of the exchange rates, that will be considered as a realized gain or loss. Whereas this is just a notional, so we call it as unrealized gain or unrealized loss. So the the main important is on 31st January the vendor amount is open still. That's where the problem is arising. If the payment is happened to this vendor, we will have a realized gain or loss. There the matter ends. But as on 31st January, the vendor amount is open still. So if the vendor amount, if the vendor, any open item, if any GL open item or vendor customer, if at all we have any open item, that has to be considered. If any transaction happened in foreign currency and which is an open item or any GL, so if the transaction posted in foreign currency and still it is on the last day of the month, we need to revise the value of that particular transaction. So that process is nothing but foreign currency revaluation. We are revaluing the foreign currency. We are revaluing the foreign currency. Okay, so it is not whatever the difference that we are getting here on 31st January is not the real one. It is just a notional. Okay, so the notional part is considered as a realized gain or loss. Now let's say on 10th of, yeah, so uh, let's come back here. So since we are calculating the unrealized gain or loss on 31st January to see a true value of profit and loss account balance sheet, nothing but true value of financial statement, we are calculating this. And this value is not the real value, it is a notional value. So this needs to be reversed in the next month. You can reverse it on first February, 2nd February, 3rd, 5th, or whatever it is. You can mention the date on which you want to reverse, but this needs to be reversed because the profit or loss, whatever is arising here, is not the real profit or loss. So this needs to be revised. This needs to be reversed. Okay, on 1st of February or 2nd of February, 5th of February, 10th of February, whatever the date we mention, it happens. If you don't mention anything, the first day of the next month will be considered for reversal. And similarly, when you are running the financial, foreign currency revaluation, whatever the day you are transacting, let's say we are on 13th of August or 12th of August, when we are running this 12th of August, still the system will consider as 31st August only, the last day of the month. So it means the day when you are calculating this foreign currency revaluation, system does not consider the same date. System always consider the last day of the month. And reversal will happen on the first day of the next month if you don't specify any date. Okay, so as I mentioned, this needs to be reversed because it is not the real profit, it is just a notional profit, so we will have to reverse, it has to be reversed. Now on 10th of February, let's say we are paying the amount to this vendor. Now on 10th of February, Let's say 1 Singaporean dollar equals to 1 USD. It means there is a change. Now, in order to, how do I come to know the change? I should not compare this and this. I should compare the original invoice exchange rate along with the payment exchange rate. I should not consider the latest one. This is just a notional, just we have ignored that part. Now, whatever the exchange rate we have considered at the time of invoice and whatever the exchange rate we have at the time of payment, the difference between these two will be considered as either a profit or loss. It is nothing but a realized. This is called realized gain or loss. So unrealized in the case of notional, that normally we will do on 31st of 31st, I mean the last day of the month. This is going to be one of the month end activities, foreign currency revaluation. So on the last day of the month we will do, and this is when we are paying the amount to the vendor. That time we will consider, okay, whether it may be realized or unrealized. Now one important point is the transaction currency we did on 1000 at the time of payment, we always consider same 1000, but the difference we can see it in the USD. It means in company code currency. So we will not have any loss or gain in the case of transaction currency, but when we convert the transaction currency into our company code, we will find the differences, either gain or loss. So 100 Singaporean dollar will be 100 USD. But at the time of posting a vendor invoice, it was 800 USD. Now we are paying 1000 USD. It means 200 is loss for us. When we are converting the foreign currency into local currency, we can see a difference, either a gain or loss. Either a gain or loss. Okay, so that is the meaning of foreign currency revaluation, foreign currency valuation. Any questions?
No.
Okay, so let's see what is the,
Ananda,
yeah,
suppose if the company doesn't like the company doesn't want to see the month end statement every month end, rather they wanted to go, they are closing, not a closing, but they wanted to see the statement every quarterly.
mhm,
So that, so in that scenario we do not have to do every month end, right?
correct,
This
correct.
foreign currency revolution. Okay.
See, all these month end activities are just an optional, those are not mandatory. Okay, those are not mandatory. See, one of the month end activities open a fiscal year period. If you open 1 to 12 months of a particular year, you don't require. These are all optional. Running of depreciation, this is again optional. You don't have to do at the month end. If you want, you can do at the year end. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay. So now we know what is realized gain or what is realized loss. And similarly, we know what is unrealized gain and what is unrealized loss. Now we will see the journal entry in this case. What journal entry we will have here. Now at the time of posting a vendor invoice, so we will be considering the same example. So debit expenses, this is company code currency, and this is, let's say I'll take first transaction currency and company code currency. Okay, so transaction currency is 1000 Singaporean dollar and company code currency is USD, which is nothing but 800. So debit expenses, credit vendor. So currency is the thousand, what is that? Singaporean dollar, 800 in US dollars. At the end of the month, we have seen some realized gain or loss. Okay, so 1000 Singaporean dollars will be 750 USD on the month end. So there is no change in the Singaporean dollar, but 750 is the USD. What was the amount at the time of posting an invoice? It was 800. Now this became as 750. It means whether it is a profit or loss for us. Is it a profit or loss for us? It is a profit for us because if I pay the amount on this date to this vendor, I would be paying 1000 in Singaporean dollar. There is no change, but in USD it is 750. Instead of 800, it is 750. So 50 is my gain. Gains will show, incomes will show on the credit side. So unrealized gain of how much is the difference? 50. That 50 will be considered, the difference of this 50 will be adjusted to balance sheet adjustment account. Okay, balance sheet adjustment account. And of course this will get reversed on the first day of the month, whatever the date we mentioned, this will get reversed. So this will be nullified, so there won't be any impact if you see in the next month. But on 31st of that particular month, you can see balance sheet, on the asset side you can say 50, and on the income side you will say 50. Okay, it will be a true balance sheet. Now, when we are paying the amount, so 1000 Singaporean dollar and 1000 USD. So when we are paying the amount, we never should consider this thing. We always have to compare with the invoice amount. Now we are paying the amount. So normal entry will be vendor debit and credit bank account. In Singaporean dollar, I'm paying 1000 only, and in Singaporean dollar, I'm paying 1000 only. And how much I'm paying to the vendor? I'm paying to the vendor as on this date 1:1. So I'm paying $1000. But how much I supposed to pay to vendor in USD? It is 800. Now you have a difference of 200. That is nothing but loss for loss. So loss on realized or realized gain or loss, or you can say loss. So realized loss, this is a loss for us. So loss expenses are to be debited all the time. Any questions on this journal entries front?
No, Nanda.
Okay. So any other questions? Absolutely no. Fine. So let's jump on to the configuration side. So we need three accounts basically to consider. So normally what happens is here balance sheet adjustment account, unrealized gain or realized gain or loss. So most of the times what normally we do is realized loss or gain, we will keep one entry, and unrealized gain or loss, we'll keep only one GL. So one GL for realized gain or loss, and one for unrealized gain or loss. The third one is going to be the balance sheet adjustment account. So normally we maintain three accounts, and most of the times, whether it is unrealized gain or realized gain, we will be keeping only one GL. It means both in the case of unrealized gain or loss and realized gain or loss, we'll keep only one account, and balance sheet will be the second two accounts we will maintain. It's up to the business to consider. Or if you want unrealized gain 1, unrealized loss 2, unrealized loss 3, realized gain 4, and balance sheet adjustment account 5. So total you can create 5 accounts. Or it's totally, you know, it's totally depends on the business requirement. So we need to have at least three accounts. Normally we will create three accounts. So let me go and create first those three accounts and I'll start the configuration. So I'm going into FS00.
So the
So
balance sheet adjustment account considered to be assets or
it's a
liabilities?
liability basically. We normally consider it's an adjustment account, right? So we will create it as a liability account.
Okay.
So I'm creating that under other liabilities. It's not that much important. If you want, you can consider that as, even asset also. Why? Because anyways the balance will be nullified once that is reversed. So you can consider as a liability or asset. Anyways, that the business will give us that information. Okay, balance sheet adjustment account.
Quick question, Nanda.
Yes,
So if there is a debit balance, can we show on the asset side? And if it's a credit balance, can we show on the liability side? Can we do that on the financial statement version?
we can show that in the financial statement version, but that is not the right approach to show. So basically, you mean to say that a particular GL, it has to have always the debit balance, and you want to show debit balance only.
No, is there a way to say, like, if we create one account,
Hmm.
if it's a debit balance, show it on the asset side. If it's a credit balance, on the
No,
liability
we
side.
don't
It
have that.
doesn't.
No, we don't have that option.
Okay.
We don't have that option. So you can show, suppose on the asset side, asset balances always show debit balance, right? Positive balance. Now in a particular bank account, let's say I'm creating a bank account as an asset. Okay. Now I have withdrawn. It means overdraft amount. So it is showing as a negative balance. So system will not take that balance on the liability side. It will not show that. It will remain in the asset side, but it shows the negative
But it's
balance.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just creating one balance sheet adjustment account. Done this. Okay, let me create one unrealized gain or loss. Okay, I'm just creating two accounts only. One for realized, the other for realized, unrealized. So I will say 1,10,000. I would say 3,10,000. Okay, I will say here. So you have to do a lot of other things as well. Okay, you will have to do lot of other things, like you need to maintain a default. Okay, so profitability analysis is not active. So what I'm going to do is, we have cost centers, right? So I'll be creating these GLs as expenses, not incomes, because anyways, incomes, in the case of income, it expects a default. We can do that in FGL3 case, that's fine. So let me create at the moment as expenses. We will discuss once we have profitability analysis in place. I'll show you the income side also. Okay, I'm showing it now as an expenditure. I will show it as 39,000, 4,39,000. I will say them as realized gain or loss. Realized gain or loss account. Remaining things are all same, just the same. Next is 4,40,000. I will say unrealized. Okay, I've created those three accounts. Okay, 4 lakh 39, 4 lakh 40, and adjustment account. One adjustment account also I have created. Now let's jump on to the configuration. Okay,
Nanda, does it matter, whether you open under income category or expense category, unrealized and
no, there is
realized?
no problem at all.
Oh, okay.
See, the point is in the case of expenses account, it expects a default cost object, right? Cost center.
Yes.
So since we have discussed the cost center part, I'm considering this cost center because we have an option to maintain a default cost center for these expenses. So I'll maintain. I mean, I'll not maintain now. Once I show you the error, we will come and maintain the same thing.
But otherwise, we can assign
You can
different field
consider
status.
anything.
No, otherwise we can, simply use different field status of variant. So that does not require cost center or cost object.
No, but anyways, either a cost center or profit center is required, right?
Mm.
Either cost center or profit center, because this transaction realized gain or loss, whatever the entry I'm showing, we are not posting this manually. The moment we run the particular transaction, system will show this thing. So for vendor and bank, of course, we have a transaction, the original transaction there. This original transaction whatever we have, system will pick up the same thing. How about this loss? This requires one CO object. System will not find that. System
Oh,
will throw up an error. So that's where this concept comes into picture, the default cost center, the
okay.
default object. We
Okay.
will discuss that part later.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's start this part. So financial IMG, financial accounting, general ledger, periodic process, and next is valuate, and finally we have valuation methods. These are the steps that we have for our financial, I mean foreign currency valuations, FCV. Okay, define valuation methods. So in order to calculate the foreign currency revaluation at the end of the month, we need a valuation method. What basically it tells us? What basically it tells? It tells how do you want to calculate and when do you want to calculate and what are to calculate. It gives that information. So just execute. Here you have some methods available already in the system. If you want, you can use the same thing, or if you want, you can create your own. Now, let's see EVR. EVR is the one that normally we will consider. Okay, what exactly we have in this case? Just select the same thing, go into details. This is the place, the configuration. This is the important configuration. First is the valuation method. It is just a code. Okay, it is just a code and with some description.
Hey, Nanda, there is a lot of statics.
Okay, how is
Yeah.
it now?
Now it's okay.
Okay, now the next is the valuation procedure. Here we have different options. How do you want to calculate your, when do you want to calculate your this thing? Means, so in which cases you want the foreign currency revaluation to consider. If I say lowest value principle, what basically it means? The valuation result in this case will be taking care only if the valuation difference of the local currency amount is negative balance. What does it mean? Just now we have seen an example. Okay, so it means whenever you have a loss situation, it means, let's say the exchange rate, the between these two things is this, and if Singaporean dollar, one Singaporean dollar equal to zero point 0.9 USD. It means, is this increased or decreased? It is increased. So in the case of increments, system will not at all calculate the foreign currency valuation. Why? Because it is specifying that lowest value principle. It means only in the case of negative balance, system will calculate the foreign currency valuations. Okay, this is about the lowest value principle. Next, the next is revalue only. This is opposite to the lowest value. It means if the value is greater than, I mean, if there is a positive value, then only system will consider. System will take that into consideration while calculating the foreign currency valuation. Foreign currency valuation means end period end activity. The activity that we are, the configuration that we are considering relating to this, not the original payment. I am referring to this part, not the payment part. This is the payment part. I'm not referring about this. I'm referring about the unrealized gain or loss. This situation I'm talking about. This comes into picture only at the end of the month. So during the month end activity, we will have this. Now, if I select a revalue only, if I have a positive value, it means if I have a gain value, then only the system will calculate the foreign currency valuation. Otherwise, system will not calculate. Now, what is always valued? Whether it is a positive or negative, system will always calculate. Foreign currency of any transaction will be valuated. It means revaluation result is considered irrespective of the result. Irrespective of the result in the sense whether it is a gain or loss. In that case, it will consider. Any questions?
No.
Okay. Now, what about the strict lowest value principle? It says whether it is a increment or decrement. It means whether it is a loss or profit. If it is a greater loss or greater profit, then only the system will consider. Greater, it means huge amount of loss or huge amount of profit, then only the system will consider. So normally we will consider always valued because I want to calculate even a penny in my books. So we will always consider, always value it. Next, group vendors. Vendor accounts are categorized into groups here. And during the valuation process, the list of vendors grouped under this will be viewed as whole, and the same conditions will apply here. It means all group of vendors will be cumulated and will be considered and applied the same conditions in the sense whether it is always valued, revalued, whatever it is, all these will be applied on the group vendors if I select group vendors. Okay, but normally we will calculate individually because I want to know what is my profit or loss on each of the vendors. So normally we don't consider. Similarly, the same in the case of customers, same in the case of GL accounts. Okay, same in the case of, it means if you select it, all the items will be grouped to uh, all the items of all the GLs will be grouped and will be evaluated at the end of the month. Okay, next is balance sheet valuation. If I select this, what happens? All open items are balanced per account. Okay, balance sheet valuation. So all the open items will be balanced per account. The balance of that amount will be valuated, and the difference whatever we have will be considered as either an expenses or revenue. So what does it mean is it will not consider the line item wise. It will consider the total of that particular GL. Okay, that is considered here. Now, this is what post per line item. This is what basically we will consider. Now, what happens if I select this? The revaluation is done at line item level. It means line item is generated for each valuated item in the transaction. For every line item, we can see one gain or loss account. Every item will be considered separately. Every line item is considered separately and will be calculated the journal entry accordingly. Okay, so if you want, you can consider this. Normally we will select this. Now what document type do you want to consider? That is what about this thing. Next, exchange rate. Exchange rate type, what you want to consider in the case of credit balance and in the case of debit balance. That is what here we will consider. Exchange rate type for translation. This is a different concept. We will see that part little later.
And
Hmm.
the exchange rate type, debit M and credit M, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you suppose that if the transactions has been posted in a euro,
Mm-hmm.
then that requires different exchange type, right?
That's what I'm
EURX.
saying. That's what I'm saying yesterday. So system, even if you mention MKY, whatever it is, when in any transaction, if the system finds EUR, system will always go to EURX, pick up the amount. That's it. There is no standard. There is no rule at all because reference currency is always EUR. We have discussed this part clearly in the last class.
No, that is right. That's the reason my question arises here. If we define here M, that becomes the defaults value, right? So
Let me tell you one thing. Let me tell you one thing. So here I'm going into a document type. Yesterday we have considered SA. Okay. Here we don't have exchange rate type maintained. If it is a blank, what does it mean? System will consider M only. That's what I told. Right?
mhm.
Now, using the same SA, yesterday we have posted euro currency transaction. But why the system is picking up EURX? Why the system picked up the exchange rate based on EURX? Because the the configuration, whatever we discussed yesterday, that tells about this part. I'm repeating the same thing, just you understand. Okay. Now, in the case of exchange rate types, here we have specifically mentioned in the case of EURX, the reference currency is UR. We have specifically mentioned about this. It means if at all you have any currency with EUR, it does not talk about what exchange rate type that it has a particular document type. It's immaterial. It will consider always EURX. That's what I mentioned clearly in the last session.
But
Okay. Yeah. Tell me.
no, yeah. So, but there we are, defining M. So wouldn't that system will consider M because we specified M there?
So
So
you, yeah. So you better you post a transaction, you will understand clearly. That's what I'm saying. My point is my question is my point in this case is system will consider M in all the transaction except euro currency.
Okay.
So in the case of euro currency, system will go and pick up from EURX. That's the standard. So you don't have to think the other way around.
Okay.
Okay, it will consider always the same thing. There is no deviation at all from the the business behavior front. Okay,
Okay.
now here we have something like determine exchange rate type from invoice reference. So what are we doing at the time of posting a vendor invoice? Whatever the exchange rate type was considered, the same thing would be considered at the time of payment or at the time of revaluation. You know what I mean? At the time of posting an invoice, if the system considers the exchange rate type as M, and at the end of the month when we are calculating the foreign currency valuation, system will consider M only. That is the meaning of this. Okay, then exchange rate hedging. This is a different concept. I think that comes in financial supply chain management or something. So this is not. I'm not sure about it. So minimum difference. This is something relating to it. So if at all you have some difference, I mean we are keeping something, some percentage or something, and based on that, when the percentage crosses, I mean when the actual transaction crosses this percentage, system will take into consideration. So normally we don't maintain anything here. So the ultimately what I'm trying to tell you here is valuation method EVR, whether you will be whether you will be creating your own or whether you're considering the standard one, the configuration is going to be this. This is very important step here. Always evaluate. This is the most important step. Okay, so that's about the configuration relating to valuation methods. Any questions here?
No, Nanda.
Yep. So don't ever think about euro currency or something. System behaves as per the standard. It means in the case of euro currency, it will go and pick up the exchange rate from URX. In all other cases, it will be picked up from M. That's a standard behavior. On what basis we can say? I've shown you this configuration we discussed yesterday as well. Please go through the recording once and twice. You will understand this more clearly. Okay, so we have discussed about the valuation methods. So we can create as many valuation methods as you want. Okay, now I'm talking about, let's say I have some GL foreign currency transactions. I have vendor transactions. I have customer transactions. Now, in the case of customer, let's say I'm segregating into three categories. Okay. And in this category, I want to consider always. It means whether it is plus, minus, I want the system to calculate foreign currency valuation. In this case, I will say lowest value. I mean, different method I'm saying. In the foreign currency valuation method, we have seen this part right here. In this, we have considered always valued. But there might be a situation, right, where you want to consider few GLs at lowest value, some other GLs you want to consider this, and all vendors you want to consider, and all customers you want to consider. If the business wants that kind of information, how can we do that? Okay, so for that reason we will have to calculate four different valuation methods. We will have to create four different valuation methods, and each different valuation method will be assigned to a different valuation areas. So in our example, if I say evaluate, and if I just have three types, so I'll be creating one valuation method here. Okay, first valuation method, I'll just say valuation method 1, valuation method 2, and valuation method 3. I'll be creating three things, and for each of them I'll be creating one a separate, what do you call, valuation area. So this valuation area is important while we are executing the foreign currency valuations. Let me show you that entry. Okay, so there is a transaction FAGL underscore FCV. There is a transaction code. We will discuss this part little later clearly. But in this transaction, you will find one field called valuation area. So this valuation area we will have to consider individually for those three items. So when I consider V1, whatever the categories that we have, we will be considering. What when I select V2, the relevant categories, the relevant items are to be considered. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is we can create multiple valuation methods with different parameters, and for each of them you can create a different valuation area. So the valuation method, whatever we have created, just we are maintaining over here. Okay, going into new entries, I'm creating, this is called valuation area. I'm just creating one. I'll say V1. What is our valuation method? We have just created a valuation method, always valuate. And what is our currency? Company code currency. Okay, company code currency. The other currencies that we will see later, not required at the moment. Just save it. Okay, it means I have one valuation area to this. I have maintained some parameters in the valuation method and assigned the same thing to this valuation area. Any questions here?
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have some other steps to run. So let's continue this tomorrow. So tomorrow probably we will complete this transaction, we will complete this configuration, and we'll post some transaction in the foreign currency, and the day after we will run the foreign currency valuations. We have still some configuration, the GLs are to be mapped. That part and the configuration will be completed tomorrow, and the day after we will run the foreign currency valuations. Any questions?
No